What's going on, everybody? We're back here. It's the animation. It's the Outside the Cockpit crew. I'm joined by Alex and TJ for another post-race show. We got the Italian GP just happened, a very chaotic race, might we say. Let's start with the beginning of the start, because what a start from Daniel Ricciardo to get past Max Verstappen, get right into first place. Just walk me through. What are your thoughts on that opening start?
Well, the start won Daniel Ricciardo the race. I mean, it was huge. He jumps Verstappen off the line, and that really, like I said, it won him the race. He held his nerve, and it was smooth sailing more or less from there. And in the post race interview, Ricciardo said that this weekend he felt something special was going to happen after Friday, and I mean, nobody could have imagined this. And for them to get fastest lap at the end as well, that just proved that McLaren is finally back. I mean, we saw it last year when they got P3, and we saw a glimpse of it 2 years ago when Carlos Sainz got that podium in Brazil late. But now we know for sure that McLaren is back, and with the rules change coming in next year, this is a team that's going to be worth watching in the future.
No, exactly.
It was good because obviously it's not often that you can win the race off of the first turn, but it's exactly what happened, because if he didn't jump the gap right off the start and then take the lead off of turn one, you never know what's going to happen with the Red Bulls flying, and then that could have completely changed the outcome of this race, because as we saw, eventually it all kind of went downhill for Red Bull, but obviously we're going to get into that in a second.
Yes, we are. But to your point, TJ, as well, I think with Daniel Ricciardo, that was a great start. But to be fair, honestly, I think Red Bull kind of got lucky with the whole Bottas situation, because obviously he did qualify second in the sprint qualifying race, which put him onto pole because Bottas had the penalty, which puts him onto pole position. But if you look from Friday's practice session and even Friday's qualifying, Red Bull's pace just wasn't as strong as McLaren's. So I think really, as much as Daniel Ricciardo's start was there, I think the pace advantage was better for McLaren versus Red Bull. Would you agree? Or
yeah, I would. I mean, this isn't a track Red Bull has done well at over the past few years, ever since the rules changed in 2014. I mean, they've had a few chances in the years that's gone by, but it's just never really clicked for them at this track. It's a low downforce track. Doesn't seem to be really suited to the Red Bull, because this track is all about engine power, and from their years with Renault and now with Honda, it's not the best engine on the grid. So they were always going to struggle here. That was always a given. And there was some. I mean, we were hoping that there would be something that they would deliver this year, because it's an ultra competitive world championship like we haven't seen for many years, between two different teams. So we were hoping that something would happen, but it just unfortunately never did, and it wasn't really much of a surprise, at least not to me.
No, exactly. We're gonna go on to. Yeah, we'll go. So obviously McLaren, a great weekend for them. They had a 1-2 finish with Lando Norris coming into second place. Where does this put, McLaren's future going forward for the rest of the season, and what are their hopes to achieve and stuff? Can they challenge? They've got third in the championship right now, but do you think they can challenge anything more than third, or third is just where they'll finish?
I think third is where, unless Mercedes and Red Bull continue to hit each other out in these races, I don't think McLaren has any shot of catching those two in the constructors. But McLaren had a goal set out this year. It was to be better than Ferrari, and to get P1 and 2 at Monza, which is Ferrari's. And Ferrari had a pretty decent weekend too. Charles Leclerc was pretty close. Obviously, there was a chance he could have potentially stayed in P3, but then safety cars and whatnot. But no, McLaren, they're the third team right now. They are battling Ferrari. They're trying to stay ahead of them. And then you have Alpha Tauri and Alpine and Aston Martin, and it goes down. I don't think they're not going to challenge any of those two. But for McLaren to not only get their first win in for however how long it was, to get P1 and P2 at Ferrari's track at Monza, it's very good. And going into next season with the new regulations, watch out for the little orange car. Watch out for it.
No, exactly. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, their battle has been with Ferrari this season. I mean, they weren't expected to challenge for the constructors title this year, because Red Bull just got the jump right away from the start. So I mean, it was always going to be between McLaren and Ferrari to decide who would get P3, and this was a huge boost for McLaren in that battle. 44 points there, with Daniel Ricciardo getting that fastest lap right at the end as well. I mean, this was a statement by McLaren. They're in it to win it, and they've done just that today.
But since they did get a point in the sprint, does that also count for the constructors?
Yeah, it does actually.
Yeah, no, it goes towards the constructors championship in their total fight. So,
and the drivers as well. So that's 45 points as well, with Ricciardo's P3 in the sprint yesterday.
No, exactly. All right, let's move on. Let's talk about Verstappen and Hamilton's crash. It was a big crash into turn one. There's a lot of debate of who's at fault. What are your thoughts? Racing incident, or was one driver more at fault than the other?
Well, quickly before anyone says anything, if you just listen to Max Verstappen's post-race comments, very mature, very unbiased, was not putting blame really at all on Hamilton. I think Toto's post-race comments were kind of similar too, where they really weren't putting the blame. They were all kind of saying, let them race. Obviously, I'm not going to pin the blame on anyone. You hit the sausage curve. It's pretty hard. I think there could have been a little more space given, but I'm not saying anyone was at fault, and just be happy that we have the halo in F1, because that's potentially 2 lives that have been saved just from it, because that's a full, however much a F1 car weighs, landing on Lewis Hamilton's head if there's no halo there.
No, exactly, for sure.
Yeah, you mentioned the sausage curb. They've always caused a bit of controversy at different other tracks. We've seen it at Austria as well. They've just really been a nuisance, and they tend to really ruin the races. But then you also mentioned that the mature comments from all the parties involved. I mean, I'll be honest. I think that's just because the stewards haven't made, they said that they would investigate it after the race. If there was a decision handed out, then we've seen it before, especially this season. There would have been some feisty words between Red Bull and Mercedes, whether there's be the drivers, the team principals, or on the radio or whatever. So, I mean, yes, it was nice to see them, maintain that respect, but I do think that it's just because the stewards, they wanted to hash it out in the stewards room. So, I don't know. That's just me. But as far as the incident itself, I do feel it is a racing incident, to be honest. It's because you can make a case for both drivers in that situation. Hamilton rightly said that Verstappen didn't leave him any room on the first lap at the chicane, and then for him, and then he does the exact same thing here. So, I mean, you can make a case both ways, and that's why I believe it's a racing incident. But that's just me.
If the car didn't land, if Red Bull's car didn't land on top of Mercedes' car, then we wouldn't be having, obviously, with Hamilton and Verstappen, any crash with one or both of them going out. We're going to have some conversation because they're the two leading the race for the Drivers' Championship. But it was just kind of unfortunate how they hit the sausage curb. The car flew up, rear tire, everything hits the car. That's kind of why we're like, oh, wow. Also, quickly, TSN. What are you doing? All of Canada, the biggest crash of the season, one of the biggest crashes of the season, because you decided to run a cologne ad. What are you doing?
I know.
Stop running ads every 7 laps.
That's why you have to invest in F1 TV. It's the best out there. No ads. You can get driver cams sponsored.
Okay, but I don't have to pay for F1 TV when I have cable.
I know. No, that's fair. That's fair. TSN is good.
I'm just saying, for everything, at least let me hear some of the audio, because you cut the audio feeds too when you go to commercial.
Yeah, no, that is annoying and stuff when I've been watching on TSN, because
I'm watching the Cologne ad because it's half my screen. I turn to the left and there's a Red Bull and there's a Mercedes in the gravel.
And one's on top of the other one. So
yeah, one's on top of the other one. So I just can't handle it. I can't. Thank you,
crazy, TSN. Yeah. And just to finish up on this point here, both your points, I would agree. It's a racing incident. It was just, they were racing hard as they always do. We've seen it even at Copse Corner at the British Grand Prix. They were racing hard into that corner. Neither wanted to give way because they're fighting for the championship. And it was actually interesting because someone, I think, made a comment. It was either an Instagram post or Twitter, and said when Verstappen was going against Ricciardo, he went off wide and he let Ricciardo by and stuff. But when he was battling Hamilton, it's a different instinct, because when you're battling your championship rival, you're making different decisions, making different instincts. And also for the halo part, that's great that we have it, because I think that's now 2 or 3 lives. The first one being in 2018, I think it was when a McLaren flew over the top of Charles Leclerc when he was at former Sauber Racing. And so that was like one incident as well, when you could throw back as well to 2018. But it is a great invention that I think a lot of people at first were like, we don't like it. It's going to, cause a distraction from in terms of our racing view, but it's glad it's there for sure.
Yeah, I mean, I was against it at first, but I mean, I viewed it as a necessary evil. And we've seen it prove itself over and over, not just in Formula One, but in the lower categories as well. There have been instances in the lower categories where, the halo has saved lives. And it's, we saw it once again today with the crash in question. It saved Lewis Hamilton's life. And had the halo not been there, it could have been a much darker story.
It would have been, for sure.
All right. So before we move on to who finished in P3, let's quickly talk about what happened this weekend for Alpha Tauri. Obviously, just a series of unfortunate events. The Red Bull team, Red Bull Racing, hasn't really had a good weekend. Alpha Tauri, you saw it right off the start. Yuki Tsunoda couldn't even race. Something happened on the brakes. They weren't going to be able to fix it. It happened 3 minutes. They were literally about to do the formation lap. It wasn't going to happen. Pierre Gasly, it's been brutal. Just absolutely, it's just been tough for AlphaTauri this weekend, and I really feel for him, especially Gasly, because he's just been having an amazing season, and if it wasn't for some of these unfortunate events, he'd be a lot higher right now in the standings.
I think that's fair. Yeah, he would be, honestly. And to that point as well, it's just been really unfortunate from when you start from AlphaTauri's with obviously the sprint race, with the incident then, and then during the race as well. So it's just been overall a tough weekend. You got to feel for Gasly, like you said as well, because Gasly all throughout the season has been doing really well. He's been putting that AlphaTauri in places where it technically shouldn't be. He's been pushing it to the limit, getting everything out of that car. And, it's just unfortunate there's certain situations that he's been in and stuff.
Yeah, I mean, it's, the last time we saw him struggle this massively was in Bahrain right off the season opener, when he made contact with, I can't remember who it was, but, he basically lost his front wing, and that basically ruined his race. So it was just really unfortunate to see him lose out, right at the start as well. I mean, it was largely due to the crash yesterday. I mean, they mentioned it off the start of the show. I mean, there were so many parts that had to be replaced on his car that it was just never going to be, even if it was ready on time, it just wouldn't have been competitive in today's race. So, I mean, it was always going to be tough. And then obviously for Tsunoda, I think they said it was a braking hydraulic issue off the just before the start. So that's also unfortunate. I mean, he's had some bad luck, and he's had some instances where he's been out of form, but he was rewarded, and he's getting for decent drives. He has had some good moments, and he is getting a drive for next season. But he needs to really, yes, he's had some bad luck, and today was another example of that. But it's just a shame, because when on his day, he can do some great things in that AlphaTauri.
Yes, for sure. Alrighty. Obviously, let's talk about Valtteri Bottas going from P20 up into P3. What a drive from the Finn. What are your thoughts on that drive from Valtteri Bottas?
Well, after not being renewed by Mercedes, he goes out, he wins the sprint, and he has to start at the back of the grid because of the gearbox change. And then I said I told multiple people he's just gonna drive the hell out of that car, and I said he was gonna get P7, and that was before all the crashes. And then I'm like, he might get podium. And if Sergio Perez wasn't in front of him, if they had to pit and take that 5-second penalty, he was gonna challenge, and I think he would have passed Lando, honestly, just with the pace. So if Perez wasn't there, there would have been a chance that Valtteri could have potentially won this race.
Easily, for sure.
Yeah, he did say to the team that he was aiming for a podium, and he did get it eventually. And yes, he had, like you said, a bit of luck with the safety car and the crashes and all that. So, and then obviously Perez getting a 5-second penalty as well. But I mean, this is the Valtteri Bottas everyone wants to see, everyone's wanted to see over the past 5 years. And it's just unfortunate for him that, he could never get up to that place where he's consistently challenging. He's had a lot of bad luck and, incidents, going back to Imola. That was the big one this season. And that's the thing when you're competing against, when you're on the same team as a driver that has the capability of Lewis Hamilton, it's always going to be tough. And, George Russell is going to find that out next season now that he's been confirmed as Bottas's replacement at Mercedes. So I'm really excited to see how that's going to happen. But it was nice to see that Valtteri Bottas he does still have it. And Alpha next season, where he's going, they're going to be really excited about his drive today as well.
Oh, for sure. Exactly. And to the point as well, what's interesting is Valtteri Bottas starting P20 was literally a tactical move by Mercedes. They're like, okay, we're going to give you the chance to win the sprint to take points away from Verstappen, which they didn't do because Verstappen got second and he got pole position. He ended up getting 2 points and getting, well, obviously they crashed out, but regardless. And then he started the back of the grid, and then Lewis Hamilton had the chance to go win the race on Sunday. That didn't end up happening. But for Valtteri Bottas to go from P20 all the way to P3, it gives me vibes to like when Sebastian Vettel did that in Germany 2019. That was like similar. That was like the similar situation. Obviously, it was different race conditions, but regardless, it's that same situation. And it's just a great drive from Valtteri Bottas for sure.
Yeah, we've seen a lot of charges from the back over the last few years. You mentioned Seb Vettel at Hockenheim in 2019. Sergio Perez has done that recently. In the second Bahrain race last year, he was hit off the start and he goes up and ends up winning the race. Yes, he had a bit of luck there as well, but he still won the race. And then this year at Bahrain as well, he gets an electrical failure on the formation lap, has to start from the pit lane, and he manages to wrestle his car to P5 in the first race of the year. So we've seen a lot of that, and that's what I think fans really like to see, and that's what also I think racing fans like to see. They love these charges from the back with drivers out of position because that makes the races more exciting.
No, it does for sure. Now you mentioned as well George Russell going to Mercedes. Let's talk about this 2022 driver lineup because there's been multiple changes or multiple confirmations for next year's season. Obviously, George Russell going to Mercedes. I'm trying to think of Alex Albon is going to be going to Williams, going with Nicholas Latifi. And obviously, there is still that second Alfa Romeo seat that is still has not been decided, and it's possibly not going to be decided until the end of September. So what are your thoughts on so far how the 2022 driver lineup is shaping up?
Well, it wasn't really much of a surprise when you look at it in the grand scheme of things. A lot of teams were going to be keeping the same lineups. Red Bull, McLaren, Haas, Ferrari, Aston Martin have yet to confirm their driver lineup, but it is going to be pretty much the same lineup. Alpine as well. Really, yeah. As well as Alpine and Alpha Tauri keeping their lineup as well. So, I mean, there was a bit of doubt whether or not there would be some movement within the Red Bull family, but that was eventually put to rest, and not really surprising that was the case. So it was always going to be centering around Mercedes and Williams on whether George Russell would get the Mercedes seat, which he eventually has, and now Valtteri Bottas is off to Alpha. So really the only remaining seat in question is the second Alpha, and the team did say that they were waiting for the Formula 2 season to take shape before they decide who would partner Bottas, whether it would still be Giovinazzi this year, Giovinazzi or maybe an F2 driver. There's been a lot of talk that Guan Yu Zhou might move over from the Alpine Academy and take that second seat. And obviously he does bring extensive backing from China. So there is a real chance that he could get that Formula 1 seat at Alpha. And I mean, it makes sense when you think about it from that perspective, because he's never going to get the Alpine seat. The Alpine at this point, they don't seem like they're going to be promoting one of their drivers into their own seat. So the drivers in their academy will have to look elsewhere. And that also pretty much puts an end to Nick de Vries's chance of getting a seat in Formula 1, because it was either Williams or nothing for him, really, because he wasn't really heavily linked with the Alpha seat. So it seems at this point it's going to be Guan Yu Zhou getting the seat, but if Giovinazzi picks up his form later in the season, he might very well be staying on next year as well.
That's a fair point as well. What's interesting, what we obviously know with Formula 1 is cash is king. So having the backing, having the I think it's an extra $30 million in sponsorship that he brings in from from China, which is huge because when you think about back to when Sergio Perez and Esteban Ocon were fighting a seat to go to formerly Racing Point or Force India to Racing Point, he had backing from Carlos Slim, I believe it was. And that was really the main reason why he got that seat. Obviously, he was a great driver, but that backing just secured that seat. So it's clear that money is huge for Formula One teams, especially small budget teams that need all the money in the world they possibly do.
Here's another thing that's interesting, though. Not just the extra money that can you pronounce his name again? I don't want to butcher it.
Guan Yu Zhou.
So for Zhou, it's not just the 30 million. You're opening yourself up to the Chinese market, which is extremely big. Mm-hmm. So if you have a Chinese driver in F1, you are getting not just the initial money, but you're potentially opening yourself up to all of those sponsorships over there as well.
Well, I mean, there's already a big market. I mean, like you said, there is a big market for F1 in China. Ferrari are sponsored by a Chinese company, Weichai, I believe. And I think there is extensive Chinese sponsorship in Formula One already. But I mean, I want to see an American driver make it to the grid, maybe from IndyCar or whatever, because that's where their focus needs to be right now. Obviously, they added the second race in Miami next year, but I think that's where they should be, focusing on. Obviously, unfortunately, there isn't an American driver in the European Open Formula Series that can really have a legitimate claim to an F1 seat. So the best chance is maybe for IndyCar, but that very rarely happens. You see a driver from IndyCar crossing over to Formula One. Usually it's the other way around. But I mean, if Guan Yu Zhou does get the seat, which he very likely will, it is going to be great for the Formula One market in China and for Chinese the Chinese fans in Formula One. But I mean, he's really the only, it's really only down to him or Giovinazzi at this point. And there's been a lot of, I'm actually quite surprised that some of the other drivers in the Formula 2 category, Oscar Piastri is leading the championship and he's not being mentioned at all. Robert Schwartzman also has a chance of getting that Alpha seat, but now there's now Alpha aren't under any obligation to select a Ferrari affiliated driver. So, there's still some speculation that he could get the seat, and then when you look at Alpha's own driver academy, Théo Pourchaire is doing extremely well as well, getting 2 wins this year, the feature race at Monaco and one of the sprint races this weekend at Monza. So, they do have a wealth of options, Alpha, and they are a good team that are capable of doing well on their day. So right now it does seem like it's going to be a battle between Guan Yu Zhou and Antonio Giovinazzi, but there are a few outliers who could have a legitimate claim to the seat as well.
That's fair. Well, hopefully maybe if Italian Jesus can keep doing well and stuff throughout the season, then he might retain a seat, but who knows? It's up early. All right, let's end with talking about the driver of the day. I feel like most of us know what it is. Who is your driver of the day from today's race?
Valtteri Bottas.
That's Valtteri Bottas, yeah?
Yeah, I mean, fair enough. He started from the back and he made it up to the podium. For me, it was Daniel Ricciardo. There was no other option when you look at the grand scheme of things. Overtaking Max at the start and holding off and getting his first win in 3 years, McLaren's first win since 2012, and their first 1-2 since 2010. I mean, this was huge, and this was a long time coming. McLaren has been through some rough times, and Daniel Ricciardo has been through some rough times ever since he left Red Bull. And for him to jump Max at the start and calmly hold the lead of the race pretty much all throughout, this was a really, really great drive from Daniel, and I think it's one that everyone wanted to see happen again. We love seeing Daniel on the podium. We love seeing Daniel Ricciardo win because it's great for Formula One. He's a great character. He's a great guy, but he's also very quick, as we saw today. He controlled the pace at the front. He held off every single challenger, and he deservedly got his 8th win.
No, exactly. It was for me as well. It's got to be Daniel Ricciardo from start to finish. He just dominated the race. He held his own. He had great amount of pace. He just had a great amount of poise on the track, like you said as well. And it was good to see because Daniel Ricciardo, I feel like he's one of those like drivers and characters that we have to keep on the grid and stuff, like kind of like Lando Norris, where it's like they have a really good personality and they're really good for the sport because they interact with the fans. Like we saw him interacting with the Dutch fans at the Dutch Grand Prix. wearing the cape and stuff, and like out of the races as well. So in terms of as a marketing standpoint, he's great to just have on the grid. And when he wins the races and does well, everyone loves it. Like everyone likes it. Like I'm a Max fan, but I don't care. Like Daniel Ricciardo won a race. That's great. That's great. You love to see it. So
yeah, even me, I rep Ferrari all the way. But I mean, I wore the sweater because I was happy that McLaren won. That's been such a long time. It's been such a long road for them, a long and difficult road. I couldn't be mad that McLaren got a 1-2. This was fantastic to see, and it's great for Formula One.
I want to end this episode on this Daniel Ricciardo quote. Thanks for having my back, and for anyone who thought I left, I never left. Just moved aside for a while.
Yeah, nothing else is needed.
Yeah. Thanks for watching the Outside the Cockpit Formula One post-race Monza edition. We will be back in 2 weeks. Where are we going? Russia?
Russia.
We're going to Sochi.
Mother Russia.
So you get a week off, and we're right back at you. Thanks again for watching, and the Outside the Cockpit crew will see you guys soon.